First contact fears. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the Deep Space Research Station Copernicus, watching distant stars twinkle against the vast darkness of space. After 15 years of sending signals into the void, humanity had begun to accept that they might be alone in the universe. That changed 3 days ago. "Captain, we're picking up another signal." Lieutenant Rodriguez called from his station. "Same format as before, but this time it's closer." Sarah turned from the viewport, her heart racing. The first signal had appeared at the edge of their detection range, a perfectly symmetrical pattern that couldn't have been natural. This one was different. "How much closer?" "Just beyond Jupiter's orbit, ma'am." "And?" Rodriguez paused, his fingers flying over his console. "There's something else. They're broadcasting in multiple frequencies, including ones we use. I think they're learning our communications." The crew of the Copernicus had been chosen for their ability to handle unprecedented situations, but first contact with an alien civilization went beyond any simulation they'd run. Sarah moved to the central command station, bringing up the sensor data herself. "Send the first contact protocol package," she ordered. "Let's show them we're ready to talk." The response came faster than anyone expected. The alien vessel, if that's what it was, began broadcasting in perfect English, though the message itself was puzzling. "Warning. Approach with caution. Local space conditions exceed safety parameters. Requesting confirmation of biological sustainability protocols." What do they mean, local space conditions? Rodriguez wondered aloud. "We're well within the habitable zone." Before Sarah could respond, the alien ship appeared. It materialized just outside their sensor perimeter. A massive structure that seemed to be made of interconnected spheres, each one shimmering with an iridescent coating that bent light around its surface. "They're hailing us," Rodriguez reported. "Full video transmission." Sarah straightened her uniform. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, revealing what appeared to be a control room filled with crystalline beings floating in some kind of purple liquid. Their bodies were translucent, with complex geometric patterns swirling within them. The one in the center moved forward, its internal patterns shifting rapidly. "Greetings, Station Copernicus." The alien spoke, its words translated through some unseen mechanism. "I am First Observer Calyx of the Andromedan Confederation. We must verify your species' environmental tolerances before proceeding with diplomatic contact." Sarah blinked. "Of course. We're operating within standard Earth normal conditions aboard the station. Temperature 21 degrees Celsius, pressure 1 atmosphere, gravity at 0.8 Earth standard due to our rotation." The patterns within the alien's crystalline form turned a deep violet. "Impossible. Your environmental readings indicate conditions that would cause immediate crystalline matrix collapse in most sentient species. Please confirm. You exist in these conditions without protective fields." Yes. Sarah shared a confused look with Rodriguez. "These are optimal conditions for human life. Our entire civilization developed under similar parameters." The aliens' patterns began pulsing rapidly, their movements becoming more agitated. "Your world, Earth. Its gravity alone would shatter most known forms of life. The atmospheric pressure would crush standard cellular structures. The background radiation from your star would destroy complex molecular bonds. How do you survive?" Sarah felt a sudden understanding dawn. These beings weren't afraid of human technology or weapons. They were afraid of humans themselves. To them, Earth wasn't just another planet. It was a death trap that had somehow produced intelligent life. "We evolved here," she explained carefully. "Our bodies are adapted to these conditions. In fact, we need them to stay healthy. Too little gravity causes bone loss. Too little atmospheric pressure makes it hard to breathe. Some radiation exposure is actually necessary for certain biological processes." The alien observers recoiled visibly. Their transmission cut off for several moments before returning. When Calyx spoke again, their voice carried a note of what might have been awe. or fear. "We must revise our initial contact protocols," they announced. "Your species, you are not what we expected." The Andromedan Confederation has encountered many civilizations, but none that evolved in conditions we classify as lethal. "We need time to process this information and consult with our leadership." "Of course," Sarah replied diplomatically, though her mind was racing with implications. "We're happy to provide any additional information that might help." "That will not be necessary," Kilix responded. "We have already gathered more than enough data to justify establishing a safety perimeter around your solar system. Please understand this is not a hostile action. It is a precaution." As the transmission ended, Sarah watched the alien ship begin to move away from the station, maintaining what seemed to be an unnecessarily large distance. She turned to her crew, seeing her own mix of confusion and amazement reflected in their faces. "Well," she said with a slight smile, "I don't think anyone expected first contact to go quite like this. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made contact with an advanced alien civilization, and they're apparently terrified of us. Not because of what we might do, but because of what we simply are." As the Andromedan ship disappeared into the darkness of space, Sarah couldn't help but wonder what other surprises awaited humanity among the stars. They had spent centuries wondering if they would measure up to alien civilizations, never considering that they might be too tough, too resilient, too adapted to harsh conditions. Earth wasn't just their home. It was a forge that had shaped humanity into something the galaxy had never seen before. And the galaxy, it seemed, didn't quite know what to make of that. The resilient ones. Dr. Maya Patel hadn't expected to make history today. As the lead cynobiologist aboard the research vessel Horizon, she was used to studying extremophile bacteria in the sulfuric clouds of Venus. Instead, she found herself face to face with an Andromedan science team, their crystalline forms suspended in protective tanks filled with purple liquid. "You intend to descend into the Venusian atmosphere?" the Andromedan chief scientist, Cyrix, asked for the third time. Their internal patterns swirled with what the translation software identified as distress, without a full containment vessel. "Just our standard atmospheric suits," Maya explained, gesturing to the reinforced environment suit hanging in the airlock. "We've been conducting these missions for the past 5 years. The bacteria we're studying could be crucial for understanding how life adapts to extreme conditions." The Andromedan delegation's patterns shifted to deep indigo, a color Maya was beginning to associate with alarm. "The surface temperature of Venus is sufficient to melt lead. The atmospheric pressure would crush most spacecraft. The sulfuric acid content alone is precisely why we're so interested," Maya interrupted enthusiastically. "Life finding a way to exist in such conditions could teach us so much about the adaptability of biological systems." "Your suit," another Andromedan scientist named Vix interjected, their patterns pulsing rapidly. "It cannot possibly provide adequate protection from such conditions." Maya pulled up the suit's specifications on a nearby display. "The outer layer is resistant to sulfuric acid. We maintain internal pressure and temperature through a combination of mechanical and energy systems. It's really quite standard equipment for this kind of work." The Andromedans fell silent, their patterns cycling through colors so quickly that Maya's translation software couldn't keep up. Finally, Cyrix spoke again. "We request permission to observe your descent operation. For scientific purposes." 4 hours later, Maya guided her research pod through Venus's upper atmosphere. The Andromedan vessel maintained a high orbit, their sensors trained on her small craft. She could hear them commenting on her telemetry data through the comm channel. Temperature approaching 200 degrees Celsius, pressure increasing beyond crystalline tolerance, acid concentrations reaching critical levels. Their voices held a mixture of horror and fascination. "Conditions nominal," Maya reported back casually. "Beginning collection sequence at target depth." Through her pod's view screen, she could see the swirling yellow-orange clouds of Venus's atmosphere. The external cameras showed the collection arms extending, specially designed filters beginning to gather samples of the atmospheric bacteria they detected in previous missions. Human biological signs remaining stable, one of the Andromedan scientists noted with what sounded like disbelief. No indication of system stress despite environmental conditions that would dissolve most known forms of matter. Maya smiled as she guided the collection arms through a particularly promising cloud bank. The suits are very well designed. Though I have to admit, the acid sometimes leaves marks on the outer layer that are hard to buff out. The horrified silence from the Andromedan ship made her realize that what she considered a minor maintenance annoyance, they saw as evidence of surviving conditions that would destroy their entire civilization. Sample collection complete, she announced after another hour of work, beginning ascent procedure. As she guided her pod back toward the horizon, Maya could hear the Andromedans discussing among themselves in their own language, their transmission apparently left open by accident. The translation software caught fragments, impossible conditions, casual exposure to lethal environment, implications for galactic exploration. Back aboard the horizon, Maya carefully stored her samples in the containment lab before meeting with the Andromedan delegation. Their protective tanks seemed even more heavily reinforced than before, as if their brief proximity to Venus had made them more aware of their own vulnerability. Your species, Xerix began, their patterns now a deep purple that the software couldn't quite interpret, routinely conducts these operations in environments we classify as unsurvivable. Of course, Maya nodded. We have research stations in the methane seas of Titan, in the radiation belts of Jupiter, even in the carbon dioxide ice fields of Mars. Anywhere we might find life, we study it. How else would we learn about the universe? You misunderstand, Vix interjected. These environments, each one represents conditions that would instantly kill most known species, yet you speak of them as if they were merely inconvenient. Maya considered this. I suppose we've never thought about it that way. Earth itself has pretty extreme conditions when you think about it. Active volcanoes, deep ocean trenches, Arctic ice sheets. Life there had to be tough to survive. Maybe that's why we don't find these other environments so intimidating. The Andromedan scientists conferred among themselves before Xerix spoke again. We must report these findings to the Confederation. Your species' ability to casually survive in what we consider lethal conditions, it changes everything we thought we knew about biological possibility. As the Andromedan delegation prepared to depart, Maya couldn't help but notice how they seemed to treat the Horizon's entire crew with a new kind of cautious respect. It wasn't fear, exactly, but something close to it, as if they'd discovered that they were sharing space with beings who could swim through lava and consider it just another day at work. Thank you for allowing us to observe your research, Xerix said as they prepared to return to their ship. You have given us much to consider about the nature of life itself. After they'd gone, Maya stood in the Horizon's observation deck, watching Venus spin below. She thought about how humans had always dreamed of finding amazing alien life forms, never considering that to the rest of the galaxy, they might be the most amazing and terrifying life forms of all. Just another day at the office, she murmured to herself, already planning her next descent into the clouds of Venus, where conditions that would destroy most alien civilizations were simply another set of parameters to measure and record. Children of the Forge. Ambassador Marcus Kincaid had never seen an alien cry before. He wasn't entirely sure if the Andromedans could cry, given their crystalline physiology, but the rapid color fluctuations and vibrating patterns within First Speaker Zenith's form certainly suggested extreme emotional distress. You sent children. Zenith's translated voice contained unmistakable horror. Into what you call a summer camp. Marcus reviewed the cultural exchange data that had caused such distress. It was a simple video of a typical Earth summer camp. Children hiking through the woods, swimming in lakes, roasting marshmallows around campfires, and sleeping in basic shelters. It's a traditional part of growing up for many Earth cultures, he explained. It helps children develop independence and appreciation for nature. Nature. The patterns within Zenith's crystalline form became chaotic. You exposed your young to wild temperature fluctuations, unknown biological agents, potentially harmful radiation from your sun, variable atmospheric conditions, and untreated water sources for recreation. Marcus had been briefed about the Andromedans' environmental sensitivities, but their reactions still caught him off guard. The conditions are perfectly safe for humans. Children have been attending summer camps for centuries. The Andromedan delegation's protective tanks hummed as they processed this information. A junior diplomat named Lyrics moved forward, their internal patterns showing what the translation software identified as scientific curiosity. Please clarify. These young humans willingly sleep in temporary shelters, exposed to the elements. Well, yes, Marcus nodded. The tents are waterproof, of course, though sometimes a bit of rain gets in. That's part of the adventure. The entire Andromedan delegation vibrated in unified distress at the word rain. Zenith's patterns stabilized enough to speak again. You allow acidic dihydrogen monoxide to fall on your young. Rain isn't acidic on Earth, Marcus corrected, then paused. Well, not usually, anyway. But the kids wear rain gear if needed. They actually love playing in the rain, splashing in puddles, making mud pies. He stopped as he realized the Andromedans' protective tanks had automatically engaged additional shielding at his casual mention of children intentionally interacting with mud. The translation software struggled to keep up with their rapid communication among themselves. Ambassador, Zenith finally managed. We have reviewed Earth's historical data. Your species survived multiple extinction-level events. Yes, Marcus confirmed. The dinosaur-killing asteroid, several ice ages, massive volcanic eruptions. Life on Earth has been through a lot. And your response to evolving on such a lethal world was to embrace its dangers, to teach your young to not just survive, but actively seek out environmental challenges. Marcus considered this perspective. I suppose we did. Earth's harsh conditions forced life to become incredibly adaptable. Humans especially. We learned to survive in every environment our world could throw at us, from Arctic tundra to desert wastelands. We passed those skills down to our children, teaching them to be resilient, to adapt, to thrive in conditions that might kill other species. The Andromedan delegation conferred briefly before Zenith spoke again. We have been studying your educational institutions, your field trips to volatile geological sites, your outdoor education programs, your practice of teaching young humans to deliberately immerse themselves in bodies of water. Swimming lessons are important for safety, Marcus interjected. Safety. Lyrix's pattern swirled with what might have been incredulity. You teach safety by placing your young in a substance that could drown them. How else would they learn to survive in it? Marcus asked genuinely. The silence that followed was profound. Finally, Zenith's patterns settled into a deep, steady pulse that the software translated as resignation mixed with awe. Now we understand, they said. Your species doesn't merely survive in conditions we consider lethal. You raise your young to embrace these conditions, to master them. Every human child learns to navigate environmental hazards that would kill most adult beings in our civilization. Marcus watched as the Andromedans' protective tanks began to withdraw from the conference room, maintaining what he now recognized as their standard safety distance from humans. Your children, Zenith concluded, are born into a forge that would destroy our strongest warriors. And you consider this normal, natural, even beneficial. This is why the quarantine must remain. Not to protect the galaxy from your technology or your weapons, but from the impossible possibility that other species might try to follow your path and survive as you do. After the delegation departed, Marcus stood at the window of the diplomatic station, watching Earth rotate below. He thought about all the summer camps happening right now. Children learning to build fires, to read weather patterns, to navigate by stars, to swim in wild waters. Activities that humans had always seen as character-building experiences were, to the rest of the galaxy, proof that they were something both wonderful and terrifying. A species that had turned survival into an art form and taught their children to dance with death as casually as they breathed. He smiled, remembering his own childhood summers under the stars, the taste of smoke from campfires, the feel of rain on his face. Humans weren't just survivors of a death world. They were its children, shaped by its harshness into something the galaxy had never seen before. And now, those children were ready to step into the cosmic playground, carrying with them lessons learned in Earth's unforgiving classroom. The quarantine truth. The holographic display in Admiral James Chen's office showed a sphere of space 50 light-years in radius, centered on Sol. A glowing red barrier marked the edge of what the Andromedans called the preservation zone, what humans had initially mistaken for a quarantine. It's not about containing us at all, Dr. Elena Santos, the lead sinologist for the United Earth government, explained to the assembled military and scientific leadership. The Andromedans aren't trying to keep us in, they're trying to keep others out. Out of our entire solar system. General Maria Rodriguez leaned forward, her cybernetic eye focusing on the holographic barrier. That's 50 light-years of space they're claiming they need to preserve. Not claiming, Elena corrected. Protecting. I spent the last 6 months studying their historical records. The Andromedans have seen this before, just never with a species like us. She gestured, and a hologram changed to show a series of beautiful but alien worlds. These were all inhabited by spacefaring civilizations that tried to colonize worlds too different from their own. The results were catastrophic. Admiral Chen watched the images of crystalline beings shattering under high gravity, gaseous entities condensing into liquids under pressure, and delicate structures collapsing in harsh conditions. They're afraid other species will try to colonize Earth. Elena laughed softly. Earth? No. They're afraid other species will see us living on Earth and think they can do it too. To most galactic civilizations, Earth is a death world. The fact that we not only survive here but thrive. It defies everything they thought they knew about life. The hologram shifted again, showing data from recent xenobiological studies. The average galactic civilization evolves in what we consider perfect laboratory conditions. Minimal gravity variations, stable temperature, negligible radiation, predictable weather patterns. Their bodies are adapted to those conditions and can't handle significant changes. But we can, General Rodriguez mused, because Earth was never stable. Exactly. Elena's eyes lit up with scientific enthusiasm. Our planet's geological activity, its powerful magnetic field, its position in space. Everything that made Earth dangerous also made us incredibly resilient. We evolved to handle extreme conditions because we had to. Our cells repair radiation damage that would kill most species. Our bones support weights that would shatter crystalline life forms. Our bodies regulate temperature changes that would cause most aliens to literally fall apart. Admiral Chen studied the quarantine boundary thoughtfully. So when they say they're preserving this space, they're preserving it from tragic mistakes, Elena confirmed. Imagine a species evolved in microgravity seeing humans walk around on Earth. They might think, well, if they can do it, so can we. They wouldn't understand that our bodies evolved over millions of years to handle these conditions. The Andromedans have seen too many civilizations destroy themselves trying to colonize worlds they weren't ready for. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The hologram rotated slowly, showing the vast sphere of space that the Andromedans had marked off, not as a prison, but as a warning. There's something else, Elena added, pulling up new data. The Andromedans have been monitoring our communications, our entertainment, our plans for space exploration. They're not just worried about other species trying to copy us. They're worried about us trying to help them. Help them. General Rodriguez frowned. Think about it, Elena explained. Humans see a species struggling with high gravity. What's our first instinct? We try to help them adapt. We design suits, create technologies, share our methods for surviving harsh conditions. But the Andromedans know that some gaps can't be bridged. Not all species can become what we are, no matter how much they might want to. Admiral Chen stood, walking to the window that overlooked the sprawling lunar base. In the distance, Earth hung in the black sky, beautiful and deadly. A world that had forged humanity into something unique in the galaxy. So the quarantine stays, he said finally. Not to protect the galaxy from us, but to protect it from trying to be us. Yes, Alina nodded. But there's a silver lining. The Andromedans don't see us as a threat to be contained. They see us as an incredible adaptation of life, something to be studied and understood. They're not afraid of what we might do. They're in awe of what we simply are. And what are we? General Rodriguez asked quietly. Helena smiled. We're the children of a world that most species would consider hell. We're the ones who looked at conditions that should kill any living thing and said, yes, this is perfect for raising our young. We're the species that turned surviving the unsurvivable into an art form. The hologram continued to rotate, the red barrier glowing like a warning sign to the galaxy. Here there be dragons. Not because the dragons were dangerous, but because they had learned to breathe fire without burning themselves. And that, to the rest of the galaxy, was both miraculous and terrifying. Beyond the barrier, the diplomatic exchange station Harmony hung in space exactly at the edge of the preservation zone, straddling the boundary between humanity's protected space and the wider galaxy. Commander Aisha Rahman watched through the station's main viewport as the latest group of human ambassadors prepared to make first contact with a new alien species. They're called the Nexeri. First speaker Zenith explained, their crystalline form pulsing with calm blues inside their protective tank. After 5 years of regular contact with humans, the Andromedan diplomat had developed what might be called a tolerance for their existence. They've expressed great interest in meeting Earth's representatives. As long as we stay in our environmental suits, Aisha asked, already knowing the answer. For their safety, yes. Zenith's patterns shifted to what Aisha had learned to recognize as diplomatic amusement. Though I suspect you find the suits unnecessary. Standard atmosphere and pressure don't bother us much, Aisha agreed, checking the seals on her suit more for show than necessity. The station maintained conditions that were perfectly comfortable for humans, but it helped other species feel safer if they saw humans taking precautions. The Nexeri ship docked with perfect precision, connecting to the station through an elaborate series of airlocks and environmental barriers. When they emerged, Aisha understood why. The Nexeri were beings of pure energy, contained within fields of force that would collapse instantly in Earth's gravity. Greetings, children of the Forge world. The Nexeri ambassador's thoughts translated directly into comprehensible speech. We have traveled far to meet the species that thrives in chaos. The meeting that followed was unlike any in human history. The Nexeri, it turned out, had evolved in the coronas of stars, where energy flowed freely and matter existed in states that would seem impossible on Earth. Yet they spoke to the humans not with fear, but with fascination. Your bodies, the Nexeri ambassador observed, contain solid, liquid, and gaseous states all functioning together. You maintain form despite cosmic radiation, gravitational forces, and chemical interactions that would disrupt most beings. You are, in many ways, as impossible to us as we must seem to you. Aisha smiled behind her suit's faceplate. We've learned that impossible is a relative term in this galaxy. Each species finds their own way to exist. Yet none quite like yours. The ambassador's energy field pulsed with what might have been excitement. You evolve within conditions that would destroy most forms of life, and then you use that resilience to help others. The Andromedans told us of your engineers, your scientists, your explorers, all working to bridge the gaps between species. Zenith's crystalline form flickered. Though we maintain that some gaps cannot be safely bridged, perhaps not entirely, Aisha agreed, but we can build connections. Human engineers have already designed new environmental suits for crystalline beings, allowing them to safely visit worlds they never could before. Our scientists are working on ways to stabilize energy beings in higher gravity environments. We may not be able to change what species are, but we can help them reach further than they thought possible. The Nexeri ambassador's field swirled with complex patterns. This is why we sought this meeting. Your species understands both the harsh and the delicate, the solid and the energetic. You are bridges between extremes, which is precisely why the preservation zone must remain, Zenith interjected, to prevent those who would try to cross bridges their evolution has not prepared them for. No, the Nexeri ambassador corrected gently. The zone remains to preserve the forge that created such bridge builders, to protect the conditions that taught one species to dance between states of being that most would consider mutually exclusive. Aisha looked out the viewport at the barrier between human space and the rest of the galaxy, no longer a quarantine line, but a boundary between different ways of existing. Humanity had spent centuries wondering if they would be welcomed among the stars. Instead, they had found something far more interesting. They were needed. We're establishing more stations like this one, she told both ambassadors. Places where different species can meet safely, learn from each other, find ways to cooperate despite our different needs. Earth may be a death world to most species, but that just means we understand better than anyone how to help life flourish in unlikely places. The Nexeri's energy field harmonized with what seemed to be approval. You turned the very adaptations that could make you dangerous into tools for helping others. This is why the galaxy needs the children of Earth, and why we must ensure they remain unique, Zenith added, but their patterns had softened to show respect rather than fear. The Forge world has created something precious, a species that can walk between extremes and help others find their own paths to the stars. As the meeting continued, Aisha thought about humanity's journey. They had feared being quarantined, only to discover they were being preserved. They had worried about being seen as dangerous, only to find they were considered precious. They had evolved on a world that most species considered hell, only to become the galaxy's experts in helping life flourish in impossible places. The barrier would remain, not as a wall, but as a marker, a sign that said, "Here is the forge where the impossible became possible. Here is where life learned to dance with death and emerged stronger. Here are the children of chaos, who learned to build bridges between the extremes." And beyond that barrier, the galaxy waited, not in fear, but in hope. For who better to help life flourish in the harsh void of space than those who had turned a death world into a cradle of possibility?